Welcome to episode 6 of Mina Talks. I'm your host, Mina. Thanks for joining me in my library. In this episode, I'm presenting a story I wrote recently called Little White Lies. There are people who say the little white lies we tell each other are sometimes necessary. However, what happens when you are held accountable for every lie you have ever told, big or small, to the most important person in your life? Additionally, you can't explain the circumstances, make excuses, or amends for any of them. All you can do is witness the pain and betrayal you have caused this person, whom you claim to love above all others. I don't know if I will expand this story past what it currently is or not. I think this story is pretty closed and concise. There is little more other than possibly more details that are absent and may not add anything to the real story I could add. I would be interested to know how you feel. Do you think there are things you need to know which are not included in this story? You can add the answer to that with any other comments or questions below. I do answer every comment myself. Also, please like the channel while you're there by clicking the thumbs up. If you like this video, please take the time to look around and enjoy the other content on my channel. Share this and other videos you enjoy to your friends who would enjoy them. For more, please subscribe if you haven't, and ring that bell to receive notification of new videos as I publish. You support me and the channel when you do these things. Now, let me whisper in your ears. Eric looked at the passenger seat as he tried desperately to breathe easier. She wasn't moving. Her head was still facing him, but her eyes were blank. She had been looking at him lovingly as they discussed the changes needed to their spare bedroom. Tears filled his eyes. The emotions made it harder for him to breathe. It was then he heard voices outside his door. He tried to move his head carefully to see them, but his neck wouldn't move but so far. Eventually he gave up. His eyes moved from her lifeless eyes to the grill of the rig that had smashed into the passenger side of their car.
Breathe slowly, man.
A male voice said from his left side.
We're working on trying to get you out. The ambulance is on its way.
He didn't have to breathe to respond to the man. He wanted to tell them his wife was dead and pregnant. He hoped the baby might be alive, though logic told him it was probably lost when she died. He looked back into her lifeless sapphire eyes. Those eyes loved him. They trusted him. They had faith in him. She never doubted anything he said. Not that she followed him blindly. She was very vocal with her opinion and thoughts. She even had persuaded him to change his mind on several things. But that was different. The light that had been in those eyes, with her soul, intelligence, and love, was gone. The brain that challenged his whole being was silenced. What he wouldn't give to see life in those eyes again. Breathing was becoming more difficult by the moment as his thoughts took him through the times they had enjoyed together. So many years together had brought them to the joy they had been experiencing previous to this accident. They were looking forward to the birth of their first child in 4 months. They were excited to learn the gender of their child soon. Their discussion had been on the development of a nursery in the spare bedroom. There were things which could be decided upon before knowing what the gender of their child was. Again, that didn't matter anymore. Both of them were gone. "I'm sorry," he barely whispered, staring into her lifeless eyes. Breathing was suddenly no longer a problem. Bridget stood waiting in line. She had never considered how many people died in a day. She had already asked an assistant about her unborn child. She'd been told since he wasn't born when he died, he would be inside the gates for processing. She didn't get an understanding as to what processing was. She wasn't sure she wanted to ask. She was shocked and pained to learn her unborn child was a boy. That revelation was before she had been moved to a different line. Apparently the line she had gotten in originally was for singles and couples dying separately. She had seen another new arrival being sent to it and followed unknowing. When a guard walked down the line checking on identities, she asked her for her name before informing Bridget she was in the wrong line. She needed to be in a couple's line. However, Bridget argued, Eric wasn't there. The kind guard informed her that Eric would be joining her shortly as she guided her to the couple's waiting line. She asked if there was anything she needed. Bridget asked some simple questions, which the guard answered or told her she would be told in time. It didn't enter her mind at the time to ask why Eric had to die too. So she stood there waiting for him to join her. Her mind wondered if they would be allowed to meet and be with their son. Obviously the rules for him were different. She had no understanding of what the differences were. She stood there waiting for what seemed like hours, looking towards the gates where she knew her son was behind. Time seemed to pass differently here. Perhaps it was because she was waiting on Eric. She still didn't understand what had happened or how she had died, but she'd been told she'd have all that knowledge on the other side of the gate by one of the women in line with her. There were 3 or 4 spirits coming in every few minutes as the line moved forward. Then she saw Eric. She felt a mixture of happiness and sadness. She didn't want to be alone without him, but she also didn't want him to die. As he came to her, they embraced tightly, ending it with a kiss. She felt safe and home again. An assistant came over to guide them to a different couple's line once they finished their reunion. It didn't take any time for them to get up to the man standing at the gate. The man hugged the 2 individuals in front of them before he turned and looked at Eric and Bridget. He put his hand up to call over a couple of robed figures. "Welcome to the afterlife." As the robed figures stood next to him, he looked the 2 of them over as he continued. "I am Thanatos, otherwise known as Death in many cultures. It is my job to make sure you are prepared before you pass through the gates into the afterlife, to be given your eternal reward. In preparation for this, especially for couples, there are things you must work through before we can allow you to move forward." Eric and Bridget looked at each other. They had worked together since they were in high school. They were sure there was nothing they couldn't handle and get past. Bridget tightened her hand around Eric's as they smiled together. Turning back to Thanatos, they nodded in unison. "What do we have to do?" Thanatos put them through several different exercises which they couldn't understand the meaning of. It didn't take long for them to go through the exercises and questions he had for them. Finally, the 2 robed figures picked up items from the table beside them before moving towards them. One had a stack of thick books. The other was holding a folder with a single piece of paper in it. Eric and Bridget looked at the 2 robed figures before Thanatos spoke. Thanatos cleared his throat to get their attention before he said, "The last objective you have to meet has to do with the lies you have told in your life." Bridget looked at Eric nervously, then back to Thanatos. She seemed to shift closer to Eric as she listened. For his part, Eric never took his attention off Thanatos. Thanatos noticed the difference in their actions as he spoke. "Each of you have to read the lies your lover and spouse told you through their lifetime. We have found this can be a very painful process and can cause discontent between couples. Therefore, we will give each of you the lies to read in an isolation room before you 2 are brought back together. Note, this process will also help in determining and understanding whether you 2 are placed together or separate in the afterlife, and where." With a raising of his hand, they were separated into isolation rooms, surrounded by a glass-like substance, allowing them to see each other. Then the robed figures who had followed them to their rooms moved forward with their burdens. The stack of books was brought in to Bridget to read, while the folder was taken to Eric. Bridget looked at the stack of books before her as her eyes started to fill with tears. She looked towards Eric, with pain of betrayal filling her countenance. She had not even opened one of the books to see what they said. Eric watched her knowingly. He knew the lies he had told were going to hurt her. A few he was sure she could forgive, but there were others he was sure she would not be able to. He had tried to be a good and faithful lover and husband, but there were many times he had failed. He had taken comfort in the belief that she would never need to know. He didn't even look at the folder with her lies as he watched her tearfully go through each line of each book. The torture seemed like days instead of hours for both of them. Eric couldn't explain away each lie or ask forgiveness. He could only stand, his hands on the wall of the room, watching her cry as she went through the thick books in the stack. She paused as she cried between each line. By the end of the first book, she couldn't look at him. The lies he had told her since they had met added up. He knew each well. Every one were scars in his heart like magic marker on a whiteboard. They could not be wiped away or erased. Bridget felt her heart, which had always been full of love for Eric, breaking with each lie she read. If she had a physical body, she was sure the pain would be killing her. From the lie he had told her about the girl whom he was dating when they met, to the lie he told her in the car about his business trip for the week following the accident which caused their death. A trip he would now never take. She wrapped her arms around her middle as she cried violently upon closing the last book. She made a short glance to him which didn't meet his eyes before she turned to look out of the room away from him. She didn't look back at him again as she continued to cry. He almost fell into the chair behind him. That was it. Their 25 years together as a couple, he had destroyed when the secrets and lies he had kept were known in full. There were many times he'd wanted to come clean to her, but he feared just this, losing her. Now, in the afterlife, it was a reality. Eric still hadn't glanced at the words on the paper in the folder left on the table. He raised his head from his hands to look at her again. She was so beautiful inside and out. How could he have done this to them? Finally, he decided to look in the folder at her lies. Agony filled him as he saw only 4 words on the paper in the folder. He had to rub the tears from his eyes to read them. Finally, he pulled the paper towards him to see the words, so he could read them through his tears. The 4 words written on the paper were, "I'm not a virgin." Welcome to the end of the video. Thank you for listening to the whole story. I have to thank my wonderful husband for lending his voice to the rescuer. Let me know what you think of this story. How do you think you would have reacted in that situation? What did you think of the ending? This story was written as one of the challenges I do in a writing group I belong to. The challenge was to write a story around the prompt. A couple meets after death at the gates of the afterlife. To get in, they must read the lies their lover had told them in their lifetime. Death hands one of them a giant stack of books of all the lies the other had told. He then turns to the empty-handed person and gives them a single piece of paper with only 4 words on it. For this story, I took the liberty of creating an afterlife with a mix of fantasy, Christian, and mythological Greek afterlives. This does not represent what I believe the afterlife consists of. This is a fictional afterlife for the story. This afterlife would hold for every person in the story's world. Hence, I used Thanatos instead of saying death. I used some creative license in what wasn't nailed down in the prompt, which is completely allowed. I hope you all enjoyed it. I have not used this particular world or afterlife in any other story. Let me know if there's anything else you would like to know about this story in the comments below. While you're down there, please give the video a like and share it out. If you aren't subscribed, consider subscribing and ringing the bell so you are notified when I upload new videos. A short reminder, I have a Teespring store with merch. I have t-shirts for adults and children and 3 mug designs to choose from. I am going to be adding some more items this week. I've added the link in the description below, so check it out. Get your own Mina swag. With the Teespring link is also a donation link from Streamlabs, which will allow you to support the channel in another way. Again, I want to say thank you to everyone who has been so welcoming, supportive, and helpful. I know I've asked a lot of input from you all. I'm just wanting to get to know you all as you get to know me. Until we meet again, have a wonderful night or day, and be safe.